Hey guys, this is Matt and Mike with 4x4 Ranch.
And today we're going to show you the difference between a spacer lift and a collar lift and see which one will work best on your Sasquatch or non-Sasquatch Bronco.
So there's two different popular cheap lifts to put on the new 2021-2022 Broncos. We've got your standard spacer lift, and then we've got the collar lift. Now this happens to be a Ready Lift brand spacer lift, and this is an RPG collar lift. And the confusion that we keep seeing is, which one can I use on which Bronco? If I've got the Sasquatch package, which lift fits? And we get a lot of people complaining or commenting about, yeah, I've used this one, it works, and the next guy says it doesn't. So we want to go through and explain what the differences are, how they work different, and why you should use one and not the other, depending on which lift that you have. So let's start out with the spacer lift. The spacer lift inserts itself right on top of your strut. So here's the top of the strut, there's 3 bolts there, those 3 bolts bolt into here, and it just pushes the entire strut down. What this does is effectively move your entire range of travel down 2 inches. This is a 2-inch lift kit. So it's gonna push the entire range of travel down. So right now, this is at full droop, and this is going to go down 2 inches, and then full compression is gonna be pushed down 2 inches. Your range of travel is controlled by your strut. So that is the advantage of this, is it actually gives you 2 inches of more droop. The problem with this, and the reason why you don't want to use this on a Sasquatch Bronco, is because 2 inches more droop actually puts you beyond, this is your CV shaft here, it puts you beyond the range of travel of your CV shaft. So if you push this down farther, you're at full droop when you're off-roading and you get on the throttle, you are going to pull out or break your CV shaft by going beyond its normal range of travel. That's the problem with this. With a Sasquatch Bronco or non-Sasquatch Bronco, you're not gonna be at that edge, so you're not gonna get beyond the range of the CV shaft. So let's look at how the collar style lift will not have that problem. So now let's look at the RPG collar lift. This is a little bit different. It's not hugely different, but slight difference in how it works. What you do with this is you take the strut out to install it, you take the spring off, and then you take the bottom spring perch off of the strut. You put this on the strut and then put the spring perch back on. So it effectively moves the bottom spring perch up about 2 inches. That puts an additional amount of lift by pushing on the spring harder. What it doesn't do is it doesn't change your range of travel. Your strut is still in the exact same spot. Your spring perch is in a different spot, but the strut's in the same spot. So full compression on the strut and full decompression on the strut is the exact same spot. So when you're driving and you drop full droop, it's still gonna be the same length. You're not gonna run into a CV shaft damage when you do that. So it's a little bit more difficult to install because you actually have to break down the strut. You're gonna need a strut compressor to take the top plate off, and then you're gonna have to take off the bottom spring perch. So it's a little bit more difficult to install, not a lot, but it keeps the same range of travel. Now the problem is, what do you want? You want more range of travel? I would always like to have more droop in an off-road vehicle, but if I've got a Sasquatch Bronco, I don't want to be breaking CV shafts. So now there's one more thing, is what about the rear axle? You know, we've explained why it's important to have a collar style suspension lift if you've got the Sasquatch package, but in the rear of the axle, it actually isn't very important. Interestingly, if you buy the collar style lift, you get collars for the front and the rear, but the rear doesn't have a CV shaft. It's a solid axle. So in the rear, you probably would rather have a spacer, which pushes your range of travel down a little bit. You're gonna get more droop, you're gonna get a little bit less compression, but if you've put a bigger tire on it, that's just gonna make you less likely to rub. So the ideal lift, in my mind, would be to have a collar in the front on a Sasquatch and a spacer in the rear on a Sasquatch. Now, if you're a non-Sasquatch Bronco, so you are able to actually use a spacer front and rear, that would be my option. While we're here, we thought we'd quick show you the Broncbuster tie rod brace. We haven't installed this yet because we haven't put the lift yet on this first edition Bronco. But the way this works, if you haven't seen it before, is this tie rod here is a relatively light duty tie rod, and the weak point of this tie rod is, there's a little bit of a weak point here at the ball joint, but the real weak point is here where it's threaded. This is a hollow tube at this point, solid here, hollow here, so it can crack here. The Broncbuster tie rod brace actually goes over the tie rod and clamps down on both sides, so it strengthens the tie rod at its weakest point. So now this spot here, which is relatively weak, is reinforced by this clamping force on here. It comes off really easy. There's just a few bolts that come through from the back. So if you need to replace it, you certainly can easily, but it's very easy to put on and take off and will strengthen your tie rod, which is a weak link on the Broncos. So there you have it. Which lift is the right lift for you? Well, it depends. Do you have a Sasquatch Bronco or not? And do you plan on going off-roading or not? If you've got a Sasquatch Bronco and you want to go off-road, then I highly recommend using a collar so you don't damage your CV shafts. Now keep tuning in more because we're going to be installing all these parts on this Bronco and you can see how it works.
And if you like the content you saw today, enjoyed the information, found it useful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for 4x4 Ranch.